Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Easter 2024. It's an absolute pleasure to have so many of you here today amongst first-year exams and other exams for our first debate of term. So with the passing of the government's Rwanda bill in the Upper House just 2 days ago, as well as the upcoming general election, where Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has promised reforms to the House of Lords, we think that tonight's debate on the future of the House of Lords is particularly timely. So the motion before this House is that this House would scrap the Lords, and we are honoured to be joined by some wonderful guests tonight. So proposing the motion tonight is Darren Hughes and Kezia Dugdale, who are joined by student speaker Christopher Lord, and opposing the motion tonight, Baroness Jones of Moulsecoomb and Lord Norton of Louth are joined by Baroness Hayman. Could we firstly please give a warm welcome to all of our speakers tonight? Thank you, and because it's our first debate back of Easter term, I'm just going to do a quick reminder on format for everyone. So each paper speaker tonight will have 10 minutes to make their case to the House, and between each round of paper speakers, there'll also be time for some floor speeches from the House in proposition, opposition, and abstention of the motion. And I know one thing that I really want to make clear this time is that we're here to debate the motion and we're here to debate ideas. We're not here to debate necessarily the merit of the speakers that we have, but rather the ideas that we're hearing in this House. And because it's, as usual, I want to emphasise that if you want to make a point of information and you want to make an intervention, they must be kept short in the form of points of information and phrased as a question. And in particular, it's the speaker's right whether or not they want to take your point of information. And I really do encourage all of you to make points of information because as members, this is your chamber. But I also want you to keep in mind that it is the speaker's time and it's not really a time for back and forth. So if you think that you have something that's really brilliant and you don't think you can necessarily fit it into a 10 to 15-second question, we really encourage you to make that intervention through a floor speech. And this time, we're really proud to finally bring back floor speeches. So tonight, we'll be giving away 2 free tickets for our cocktail-making classes on Tuesday for the best floor speech, and we'll be announcing that in the bar. So with that, we'll head into the debate. So opening the case tonight for the proposition is Darren Hughes. Darren Hughes is the Chief Executive of the Electoral Reform Society, which was formed in 1884 and campaigns for democratic reforms, including proportional representation for the House of Commons and an elected second chamber to replace the House of Lords. He's also a fellow Antipodean, having served as a Member of Parliament and Government Minister in New Zealand. Darren, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm tempted to ask how we become eligible ourselves for the Tuesday night competition to how to make cocktails. Our team is certainly available. I'm sure our colleagues are here as well to join you. Can I acknowledge you, Chair, as a fellow ANZAC, as a Australian, and that's my way by introduction of saying that today is ANZAC Day, Australian New Zealand Army Corps Day, that marks the Gallipoli landings, which means that I was at the Hyde Park Memorial service at 5 a.m. this morning. So I don't expect to fall asleep in the middle of this speech, but if I do, it's not because the speech is boring, it's just because it's been a very long day already. But I also mention it because that, in a sense, is about democracy and about fighting for what people believe in. And I think what we're talking about tonight is about how we can bring legitimacy to our democracy and also bring about a sense of scrutiny to rules that are written and forced to be lived by our citizens. And also in saying that, and an opening, I think this is a very great topic to be starting with, because there are just genuinely legitimate points on both sides of this argument. So we're not going to be scaling up a full personal attack on the House of Lords or its membership. There are very genuine points to be made here about how a second chamber can operate and how it can scrutinise legislation of the House of Commons. Having said that, we're against it, and we are arguing in favour of scrapping the current House of Lords. And I want to go through the quite straightforward way that we see that as being the case, and we'll set that out over the talk from our side. and I also want to spend some time being positive, saying what might come as a result of that. So yes, obviously you can abolish anything, you can scrap anything, but you've got to think about what do you replace it with if you believe there is a job to be done or a task to be undertaken, and we certainly believe that there is that. I think if I just focus on the problems for a while about why scrapping the House of Lords as it's currently constituted is an important point for our side, is that it's no longer fit for purpose. It's not really the chamber that we need to have to scrutinise legislation. Parliament is made up of the House of Commons, elected, I'm from the Electoral Reform Society, so I'd say elected slightly dodgedly, but elected 650 individual constituencies. But there is a constituency link between the voter and members of Parliament. How that system works is a debate for another night, but for now we're talking about the House of Lords, which is the second chamber at Parliament, where there is no direct election by any member of the public. And so we believe that it lacks the democratic legitimacy to be an effective chamber. Now, because of that, it is made up, as it stands, of a large number of political appointments that are decided by party leaders, by and large, and they are life appointments. So if you're in favour of somebody who thinks you've got some skills at a certain point in your life and they decide to appoint you to the House of Lords, you're there for life, forever. So there's been a ballooning of members of the political appointed class becoming members of the House of Lords. Secondly, there are bishops from the Church of England who sit as lawmakers in the House of Lords. This fits with this point about it not being fit for purpose. The House of Lords is meant to serve the four nations of the UK, but there are bishops from the Church of England who sit there voting on legislation. And then the third category is the 92 members of the House of Lords who are hereditary members. They are aristocrats. They're also... Well, you should be sitting over on this side. And they are there for life as well, unless they decide to retire. But generally speaking, people stay for life. There are some exceptions for retirements or leave, but generally speaking, people stay for as long as they can. And that brings me to my second point, which is that it has just grown too large. So there are now around about 800 members of the House of Lords. 650 members elected in the House of Commons, 800 members who have been appointed by one way or other to the House of Lords. That is just too large. Only China has a bigger second chamber than the United Kingdom, and that's obviously, there are many differences to draw between China and the UK. We don't need to have 800 people. Now, some say, well, yeah, but they're not always there, and some come and some. The point is there are 800 people who have been given the right to vote on laws that you all have to live under who have not been chosen by you. The third point is that it has been captured. And by that I mean that the appointment process has been legitimised by a political class who are all quite comfortable with it. And on this kind of point, I can understand it, I can see it. People all know each other. The appointments, virtually no one's ever been appointed who's not been known by the person who was in some way responsible for appointing them, either by a party leader nomination or by the Prime Minister putting them there, or if they've come through a House of Lords appointment commission process, they'll be known to members of the committee. So I get why people respect the people who come before them for appointment, but really they're not coming because they've had a democratic groundswell behind them because of an idea they've pushed. It's because of the people they know. And as a result of that capturing by a political class of who everyone knows each other, it brings me to my next point, which is that it can't self-reform. There have been many, many times and examples where the House of Lords have come forward with proposals to reform itself, normally just after a controversy or just after a sense of disappointment by the public about yet more appointments. Someone will come forward and say, I've got an idea to end hereditary peerages. I've got an idea of 2 out for every 1 that comes in. And these ideas sometimes work for a little bit, but then they always fail because of that capture point I made. It is a very comfortable environment for people who have spent their life around politics or adjacent to politics and who know the environment, and so therefore that's why the self-reform can't happen. The self-reform can't happen for another important reason, which is that Prime Ministers have this limitless ability to appoint, and the most dangerous period where a Prime Minister can appoint members for life to the House of Lords is when they're leaving. So this is not about their future public policy direction, it's about the people they knew in the past. And we have seen some extraordinary appointments for life to the House of Lords by departing Prime Ministers, either through the dissolution of Parliament, which will be happening soon enough, I'm not quite sure when, but the Parliament will be dissolved soon, and there'll be honours appointments then, and then when whoever is the Prime Minister technically resigns. So Rishi Sunak could dissolve the Parliament to call an election, nominate people for a dissolution honours list then, not be returned as Prime Minister and tender his resignation to His Majesty the King, and then put forward more people who will be there for life. And we've seen through the Boris Johnson and Liz Truss period just how far this has taken, stretched out as a joke for how far they're prepared to go. So that is part of the can't be self-reformed period. Only Theresa May deserves credit for being very limited in the appointments that she made. The rest of the Prime Ministers have driven a lorry through the ability to appoint people that they know, or who have funded them, or have worked for them, or who support them for a lifetime appointment to the House of Lords. And so therefore I believe that it's become delegitimised because of these earlier points that I have made. But I want to just interrupt myself on that to say that delegitimisation, unfortunately, overshadows the very hard work that goes on by some very worthy members of the House of Lords who do take scrutiny seriously, who take probity seriously, who take the role of long-term inquiries and thoughtful reflection seriously, of which there are many people who do that. But unfortunately, in order to give those people a public platform to perform public service in that way, we have to accept hundreds and hundreds of people who simply don't do that. So one of the choices facing us in this discussion tonight is are the benefits of the status quo so high that it's worth all the absolute dross we've seen of recent years, paying that price in order to get that, or are there other models available? And we would say that in scrapping the House of Lords because it can't reform itself, because it has been captured and because it's too large, a replacement for the kind of work we do want to see is where we need to head. That's around serious scrutiny of legislation. It's around having a democratic legitimacy to start serving in this role, but maybe a long term, no right to run for re-election, but spending 10, 15 years maybe in this role, serving people as a legislator and looking over legislation, looking at things like select committee inquiries, seeing over the horizon about matters that are important. And if we did that and elected people under the proportional representation system, so we could really bring in people from all communities and all parties and independent people, we'd move away from the whim of party leaders, and we'd move away from the domination by people of particular demographics, but also geographic location, very much dominated by London and the southeast of England. And Kezia will talk about that. So I think that there are positive models for change. We should have a second chamber that scrutinises legislation and that offers the calm, long-term view that is needed sometimes when we all get a bit carried away about what was in the paper that morning. But we don't need to have the current system, which is not fit for purpose, not elected by the public, has been captured and is unable, sadly, to genuinely self-reform. And those hereditary peers I mentioned, 92 of them, were part of a transition deal in order to get it through. That was in 1997, after the 97 election, and after the 1997 election in 1999, and it still hasn't happened because it's unable to finish off the job. So for those reasons, we think we should scrap the House of Lords and replace it with a fit-for-purpose, smaller, democratically elected chamber. Thank you.